right, hello. Oh, my layout did a weird there. Anyway, hello, welcome. Another Sunday, another Speedrunner Spotlight. You know, done a few of these. We know the drill by now. Something like that. All right, let's get started here. Welcome to the show. Who do we have today? Introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm SHREDBERG. I speedrun really primarily at this point Super Meat Boy. It's one where I have speedrun like a bunch of games in the past, but none to the level of commitment of Super Meat Boy. I have way too much time in that game trying to beat it, be the first person to get all, full completion of that game, deathless. Um, yeah, that's a quick summary of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, us SMB runners need to stick together, you know.
That's right.
Well, yep, Super Meat Boy. I know I played it a little bit. Obviously, it's known for its difficulty, so.
Yeah, that's what these days. A lot of the times when it gets to talking about Super Meat Boy, people either are like, "Oh, I remember playing that game back in the day," or it's like, "Oh, I know Super Meat Boy, but I never played it." And it just depends on like, I don't know. It used to be like super ubiquitous back in the day. That was like the indie game that you would talk like if you played an indie game, if you played indie games at all, you played Super Meat Boy. If you were into platformers, you played Super Meat Boy. But these days, I mean, it's almost 15 years old, so you know,
There's a
I
lot
get
more
it.
indie games out there now.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Back in the day, that was back in the Xbox arcade era where it was like once a month they had like a big indie game, and so when like that came out, or it was like Castle Crashers, or VVVVVV, those were like it felt like a big deal. And nowadays, there's like five relatively big indie games a week coming out. So, you know, in a way that really, gives Super Meat Boy maybe a little bit more of a like a legacy compared to a lot of other games. Now you need to be like a Hollow Knight or a Celeste to really sort of have that attention. Although Super Meat Boy is probably in quality as good as those. Not trying to disparage it at all, but
It's certainly well made. Can't argue that.
yep,
It wouldn't garner the legacy it did if people didn't enjoy playing it. So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great game. I mean, it is really tough too, but in terms of speedrunning, it gets a little bit like it's honestly probably easier than a lot of. I would say that it's like I did like a Super Mario Bros. 1 Warpless run back in like 2018. There was like a speedruns live like tournament thing where each week was a random game and you had a week to prepare
you
and run it.
participated in that, huh? I was
I
there.
did, yeah.
I was there.
Yeah, I had gotten like a 26 or so, not in the race, but like leading up to it, maybe even like a 25. And then during the race I died to Bowser. Like I had like one life, died, got kicked way back to 8-1, and then I died again. And so I got like a 34 or something. Like that game's really hard. That is a really hard speed run. Super Meat Boy, on the other hand, if you die somewhere, you're losing like 10 seconds. It's really nice in that way. And it's honestly not it's not that bad. People get the assumption that because it's a difficult game that everything you're going to be doing in that speedrun is going to be difficult. And that's true to an extent when you get to sort of like a high level, but to get even like within a minute of world record is pretty possible on that game without doing anything that's exceedingly extremely difficult. And it's one of those where maybe in like Celeste is a little bit different, but it's still similar. Where if you're just trying to if you're trying to do perfect movement, yeah, it's going to be really difficult. But if you're just trying to get a better time, there's a lot of avenues to get better. Whether it's new strats, just dying fewer times. So games like that can actually be really easy speed runs compared to ones where maybe you have more of a punishment for each mistake you make. It's really nice to only be punished by losing 10 seconds.
It's interesting when you like purposely make a game difficult. You obviously want casual people to still not stop playing within 5 seconds. So
Yeah,
make it really reset heavy, or easy to reset the level, and I guess that makes it very nice for speedrunners.
it does make it really nice for speedrunning. There's been games too that I've played where it's just like I tried to run New Super Mario Bros. U and that game's like pretty good, but that run is like it's so tough because you just make one mistake on one of like the 3 or 4 hard levels on there and it's just over. You know, it's way better to you make one mistake and it's not really the end of the run. It's just it makes it a little bit more difficult, but you know, it that game really is built a lot for speedrunning and people assume that just because it's really quick, like in terms of movement speed, it's great, and that's just one of the aspects that makes that game like truly one of the great speedruns out there.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's visually very cool. I mean, honestly, visually, it kind of looks like you're just playing the game just without making as many mistakes. But I know
Yeah,
there's a few things, obviously, but
absolutely. I think that even sometimes there can be like speedruns make that game maybe look a little bit easier to the untrained eye than it may appear. That game's movement is really it's very precise, very obviously, but you can jump like a little bit later and then you're just way off somewhere and you got to make these like small adjustments.
he's so
So
fast. Like
yeah,
really fast.
it takes a lot of being able to like identify and change your movements based off of very very fine details. There's things in it that obviously look very difficult because it is very difficult, but then there's other things that it's actually very difficult and it looks pretty easy because when you have thousands of hours in the game, it can look really easy. Um, there's also some that it's the opposite where it looks really hard and it's actually like you're going like it looks like razor thin right underneath like some lasers or a saw blade and it's actually like there's like no risk here. Um, but you know you don't know that unless you try it.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the start of your journey, I guess. So, how did you like find out about the concept of speedrunning?
The concept was probably like back in the day seeing like YouTube videos of Super Mario 64 and being like, "Oh, you can beat this without getting 70 stars. Look at how you can use you know, MIPS to get into you know, the second Bowser early." And that's like, "Whoa, that's wild." And then seeing you know, BLJs back in like, you know, the the 2000s was probably my biggest um like exposure. And then even like the Super Mario Bros 3 TAS, which a lot of people talk about that TAS in terms of like, whoa, I thought that was a person, but I just remember watching that and being like, wow, I didn't know you can control games using a computer. So that one always confuses me when people thought that that was like a real run, because maybe like the first little bit where you're primarily just running to the right, but it got pretty obvious, I thought, pretty fast. But I didn't really like what I had like a pretty bad idea of what speedrunners were back in the day. Like even I'd watch like Siglemic and you know, others. I watched even like Games Done Quick back in like 2012. I thought these were just people that you know when you just play it's like your favorite game so you play it like 10, 20 times and so they just like picked up things as they kept playing it, had no idea just like how people practice things, how people found things. I just assumed that they were basically like, I guess those are called like super plays, right? Rather than like speed runs. And so I would, you know, sort of casually watch these and be like, oh, okay, that's what it is. These people are just like super good at video games. So they're able to see these things and just pick it up and just do it. And then I would try to do it and it's like, oh, this is impossible. Not really understanding what the actual work behind the scenes was in terms of like practicing and getting it. I just was like a super casual gamer as well, just going and playing a lot of like, you know, Madden and sports games and stuff. Um, I then in like 2015, 2015 or 20 probably 2015, I was like, you know what, I'll speed run The Last of Us, and I did like a couple runs of that. One of them was actually like an okay time. There was maybe 4 people on the leaderboards at the time. This was just like an any percent I think with just like pure any percent on that, like with clips and stuff, and it would have been like third on that leaderboard out of 4 people. Nowadays it would be pretty low down on the leaderboard, but that was fun. But I also just streamed directly through my PS4 and I did not have my settings on to record anything. And then I just didn't really want to do it ever again. So that was like the first one that I had ever done, but I never really stuck to that. Didn't really call to me at all to really grind that one down. And then I was like, I was watching GDQs every year, was watching like speedrunners all the time on Twitch. If I was on Twitch, I was watching speedrunning more than anything. And it was like AGDQ 2018. I was like, I just need to like pick a game and just like stick to it, actually practice it. Because at this point, I had learned, oh, these people aren't just the best gamers in the world. They're practicing every day. They're picking up on these things. They're routing things out very strategically. In a lot of ways, it's like an engineering problem. In a lot of ways, less so than just picking up a game and playing it. So I was watching and Super Meat Boy had come out like a week or so after AGDQ 2018 on the Switch, and so I was, or maybe it was like the same, like the Friday that GDQ ended. Either way, it was really close to it, and I picked that up and I was like, you know what, this would be perfect, because that wasn't the first time I had played it. I played Super Meat Boy back when it came out in 2010. I played Super Meat Boy when it came out because it was free on PlayStation. So I played it there. I bought it on the Wii U back in the day. So the Switch was actually like the 5th time that I had played through that game. And so I was able to get through it pretty quick. I was like, you know what, let's just do runs of this. Since I already had played the game a bunch, made it easy. I think that like my first actually I did like all light levels, which is like a miscellaneous category first, just trying to get that under an hour, which took me like 3-4 days. Then it was like, you know what, I'll go to any percent, and it just stuck because that game is just such a in a as I was saying before, that game is really easy to improve upon. There's so many different ways to improve, and especially your first few runs, because it is difficult. You're going to have deaths, you're going to have a lot of mistakes, and you're probably going to lose a lot of time on those mistakes. But you can just go back, practice a little bit more, come back, and then that level that took you 3 minutes is now going to be third try, and that can be really nice. Again, compared to some runs where it's like, to do this you got to do this trick and it saves 5 minutes, or else you got to go around and do all of these other things, and it's really precise, but you should be able to get it like third, fourth, fifth try. That can be really frustrating. Those like things in the middle of a run that's super precise and really necessary. But that game has none of them. And it was really addicting. And I was like, you know what I should do is, there was as I talked about before, that Speedruns Live tournament thing. I did that. There were some games in there that were really good runs. The Mario Bros. 1 that I did, Chameleon Twist, that was a fun one. I did really bad in the run for this one, but there's a game, was it Ninja 5-0? That game rules. This is like a Game Boy Advanced sort of platformer. I guess it's kind of similar to Ninja Gaiden, but it's really not, because you're sort of going back and forth in these sort of more open levels, but there's parts of it that are really linear. It's a really fun game. That speed run though, I was doing pretty well until there was just one place I hadn't really practiced. I had gone through it once, and if you do this really like precise climb all the way up to the top where there's like enemies that, it being the speedrun route, you don't have very much like health or anything. Really difficult. So that one kicked my ass. And then there was like Quake 2 was in there, and that was a fun speed run, but that also kicked my ass because there's a bunch of like rocket boosts that were dependent on your health, and that didn't really do, though a lot of those runs in there didn't really weren't really my thing. But Celeste had also just come out before that, and I did a couple runs like, in terms of just like no practice, hey, I should play through Celeste and just go through it as quickly as possible, not worrying about the not bandages, that's Meat Boy, the strawberries in there. And took a little bit. They also did a tournament there. There was like 128 people in that tournament, one of the biggest tournaments for speedrunning I've ever seen, which is really cool. Felt like back in the day there was a lot more of like an appetite for speedrun tournaments that doesn't necessarily exist as much these days. They still exist, but not to that level. I have not seen a tournament with 128 people since then. That was cool. Went in there. I think I even got a couple wins in there because there was like a pretty varying, like I was just in there for fun. I had gotten, I think I was in there in my first run. I had gotten like a mid 50 time, which was fine, you know. But then was able to lower my PB to like a high 48, which was still fine. And I thought that I was going to keep grinding it more, but I decided like, oh, I'll go back to Meat Boy and get a sub 20 in that one, because that's, I think in Meat Boy, if you're really talking about like tiers, a sub 25 is kind of like, that's a pretty good time. That's a solid time. You can get sub 25, you are pretty good at Meat Boy. You know, sub 22, and it's like, yeah, you're good. Sub 20 is like, that's a great time. That is a really good time. Like, that is a time to really be proud of. You're not just going to get in there, play that game for a week and get a sub 20. It's going to take you a little bit. It's not the hardest thing in the world. I think that a lot of times what happened to me in that grind was that I assumed that it was better off for me, and this is a mistake a lot of new speedrunners do, and they shouldn't do it. I assumed a lot of things for me were sort of off limits because I was not very good at them even in practice. And it's fine to like stay away from those if you're not good. You shouldn't be doing anything that you're not comfortable with. But I would like refuse to learn strats, and then by the time I would actually go back and learn them, I was like, oh, this isn't nearly as bad as I thought. It was really just like being afraid that by learning a strat, I was going to be more inconsistent and therefore worse. And like, is it worth the 2-second time save that it takes to learn this strat? And yeah, it was on all of these, but that grind is really what taught me that lesson, because beforehand it was really sort of a very stubborn, and in a way that I still sort of am stubborn in trying to limit this idea between consistency and speed, especially because I'm not somebody who has the luxury of running like 5-6 hours a day all the time. You know, that's very rare for me that I have that much time. So I've always been one that I much more appreciate runs than practice. But that is what first taught me that you got to prioritize practice over runs. But after that, I actually would speedrun a lot more games in like 2019 through like the end of 2020. I speedrun probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 games, like a pretty decent amount, maybe even more than that. I had run, because again, I ran Celeste. I did some Super Mario World runs, just 11 exit glitchless. I forget what time I even got. I knew I wanted to get like a sub 11 or so. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Yeah, I had done, I think like a sub 11. I forget what the time is on that one, but that was a fun one. That was one where, you know, I talk about not wanting like big mistakes to really like end a run, but that one's so short that like you know, a reset and losing 5 minutes isn't that big of a deal. The thing that got me is just some of those, I don't know, I guess the boo ring on that one level, the boo house level in 11 exit kind of, I was never good at that. So I just kind of quit that one. Yeah, ran New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe on the Switch when that came out. Actually did that for like a couple weeks. That's one where I think that really what happens is I run into these, like, I'm very picky with my runs, and I'll run into like, that one has a it's the second to last level, and it has this climb where you're the rabbit, or not rabbit, raccoon suit Mario climbing up this tower doing a bunch of pretty precise jumps off of some bombs, and I just found it to be so tedious. And that run is like under 40 minutes, and you basically get through 35 minutes of your run, and then you get there, and then you have to do this really precise trick, and if you don't do it, you lose actually a lot of time because you need that raccoon suit for things later. It just like lost my appetite for it, but it was fun to do. But I learned that I'm a little bit picky when it comes to my runs. Ran a game Gato Roboto that came out in 2019. That game is actually kind of a banger. It's a Metroidvania game, but it's a lot more linear in the sense of like you go to one area and now you're in this like sort of Metroidvania area where you get your upgrade, and then you can go to different parts in that area, and then you defeat a boss, and then you go back to a new area and you do things. But that one was fun. That was one of those games where I really did run it on release as it released, and I learned that there's a few things when it comes to that. I'm probably not the biggest fan of doing runs like the day that it, or not the day it comes out, but even early on, just in the sense of I really do like doing runs over everything else. And that run changed every single day. Like every day there was something new. And this wasn't even like a big game. There's probably like a dozen of us running that game, but just the glitches and tricks and routing that change every single time. So what happened is I was like, I'll just wait for the run to like get settled. That way I can learn the route and just go from there. And I never came back. I probably should go back at someday. That run's really good. There's some really cool things, some cool momentum boosts that you can do in that game. But I basically was like, Super Meat Boy is just too fun. I'm gonna go back to that and grind for whatever, learn 106% or something. I ran Captain Toad because that game was a banger. I just had a couple people be like, hey, want to do like a blind speed run race of this? And I was like, sure. And then did that, and it was like pretty fun. I was like, I lost, so I was like, I need to beat their time at least. Did it again, beat their time. They did another run, beat my time. And then I was just running it, trying to get a better time than Eric J. Math. But now at this point, he has a better time than me, and I just sort of have let that linger. I need to go back and beat his time. I believe what stopped me on that one was that I got into AGDQ 2021 on that one, and then I was like, oh, I need to practice and prepare for that. And then I never went back. And then also probably my favorite run that I've done that's not Super Meat Boy is Chrono Trigger 100% glitchless. That run
Really?
rules,
Wow.
but that run is really fun. But
That's
it's
so
like 6
different than
hours long.
everything else you mentioned.
Yeah, it is. It is very different, but it's 6 hours long. It's difficult to do it. I was doing it maybe like once every few weeks, kind of thing, as like an aside, and I didn't really have that great of practice habits. I would just do some practice a couple days before my run. Had my notes up on the side, got familiar with the route, but was never good enough at any particular thing. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna like actually stick to practicing this and like get pretty good at it. But then I changed my setup, and then it was kind of inconvenient for me to run through my CRT. My capture card like didn't really work. The what is there? The like I forget which one's component or composite, but it's like the U something USB. It's a pretty classic like component or composite capture card.
Components,
It
the
like
RGB composites, like the older,
gotcha, yeah. The
older
composite
one.
one
Yeah.
is like one of those like $20-$30 ones that it just stopped working for me. And so I was like, I don't know. I'll do it when I get like a retro tink. But now I have a retro tink and haven't run it since. At least that one is actually kind of a good excuse. And like if I were to run that again, I would totally want to do that. I would just do it in 2 different segments, which is pretty easy for that game to do, honestly. There's really solid stop points on that game where you can just sort of cut it in half and have a good time. But yeah, that game rules. It is very different than like, platformers that were primarily before that one. I am really like, I'm a really big RPG fan. Maybe not really big in the sense of like, especially when you get into speedrunning, you're basically like talking about like the biggest fans of like genres. And people know way more about RPGs than me. I just know that I love Chrono Trigger and the Final Fantasies and the Xenoblades and all of those. And that run is really cool. The any percent for Chrono Trigger is like less than 3 hours. It's roughly around 3 hours, but that one, it has some really tough tricks actually. To where I didn't find it super fun. A lot of precise things that require a lot of resets. There's some RNG manipulation, which technically is in 100% glitchless if you want to do it, but I just decided I don't know, I didn't really want to do that. It's fine. I can do it if I ever want to get like a top time, I could learn it, but I didn't really want to. Um, but yeah, that one was the most fun. And there's some other ones where it's just like someone came into my chat like a month or two ago and was like, "Oh, I beat your time in Noida," and I'm like, "What? You beat my time in Noida?" And then apparently I had submitted. I don't have a speedrun.com profile anymore, but um, because I just did not like how private company goes out and buys like a speedrun tool website, but that's a whole different discussion. But back in the day, I used to be a big like submit any run possible kind of guy, and I still am. You know, I really don't think the argument of, oh, I'll beat this in a day is a particularly good one. You know, if you go through a bunch of, you know, through a session of doing runs and you PB, just submit that run. You're gonna look back at it and be happy that you have that history of what your runs are. Just because it wasn't the best run, like, who cares, you know? I think some people find that a little bit embarrassing to look back and look at their bad runs and be like, oh my gosh, why was I doing that? And in some ways it is, but like, I think that that's fun to look back and look at how much better you're doing, even when it was just like a week ago, and being like, dude, why was I doing that? Why didn't I just learn the correct way to do it? Kind of thing. But yeah, I had runs of like Noida and a bunch of other small games where I just did like a run. They weren't like terrible, like slow play, you know, just playing it casually runs. Like they were speed runs, but they weren't particularly great. For like, yeah, again, Noida and probably some other meme stuff. And then like the past, since like 2022, I have basically only speedrun Super Meat Boy, and part of that is that I just have not consistently streamed, and every single time I want to go back to speedrunning something, it has been like, oh, I need to like, I want to get like a 17.3x in Super Meat Boy 90%, and then I get that, and it's like, oh, I want to get a sub 115 in Super Meat Boy 106, and then I get that. I want to get, you know, this time in all light levels. And really as well, one thing that's kind of funny is that somebody in my, after I got into AGDQ 2025 for any percent Meat Boy in that one, I started picking back up streaming again, and somebody was legitimately like, did you only start streaming again when you get into GDQ? And at first I was like, that's not true. That's and then I look back and like, I took a break in like 2021 for quite a bit, and I did some streams over summer, but not really. And then even in the fall, I didn't really do a lot of streams. And then I got into SGDQ 2022, and I streamed 2-3 months consistently after that. And then SGDQ happens, and I stream for like a month, and then I stop. You know, I get into like a side event like GDQX, stream before that for like a month, stream after it for like a month, and then I stop. You know, it actually is kind of true these days that it's not. I'm trying to make that not
the
happen.
prophecy is true.
Exactly. We're like a month after AGDQ, and I'm streaming, and it's the, you know, the pace is going pretty well. I think that really what's keeping me is like, I'm going for 106 Deathless, which nobody else has ever done. People always ask, has anyone else done that? No. No one else has really gotten particularly close on that one. I have 3 deaths as my PB, and it feels honestly like it could just happen at this point. The difference between 1 death and 3 deaths feels just like an anomaly kind of thing. Just got to wait for that run where I am, you know, I in a lot of ways just get lucky. That run is so difficult that there's no way to get around it. But that's like a big goal of mine that really does help me want to do that. But then what, you know, scares me is then what do I do after I beat that? I've been saying I need to pick up another speed run, but what that speed run is, who knows? Because as I've been saying, I get very picky and I drop off really fast, just at like a moment's notice. Maybe I'll do Chrono Trigger again. Who knows? Maybe I'll go back to Captain Toad. Those are like the 2 in my mind that I want to go back to run. Maybe a new game. Who knows? But need to do like more casual runs too, because I used to really like to do just like, oh, this is a game that I like, go run it. Takes 3 hours, even though it's like an hour and a half run. Then the next run it takes you 2.5 hours. You know, that's something I need to start doing again. But yeah, that's basically my speedrun history at this point. It's a lot of Meat Boy. I've probably done like 6,000 hours the past 7 years of speedrunning, just of speedrunning, and probably 3,000-4,000 of that's just Meat Boy. So that's where the bulk of my time is.
Fair enough. You got to have one game, right?
That's right. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that,
No, of
except for
course not.
when you want to do more and then you just don't. That's the frustrating thing is
Yeah.
I want to do other games and then it's just like the siren song of Meat Boy calls, you know. But it's better than, you know, not having a game where you feel like that's one where you just want to go back to and play all the time, you know.
Yeah, it's nice to have one, just something that's like, I'm good at this, so I
Yeah,
can always do more with it.
exactly.
Well, speaking of doing more with it, I kind of want to dive in since Meat Boy is like the primary focus. And there's a lot of different categories, and kind of want to learn more about each one, how the game kind of works on a more technical level. So,
Yeah, I mean, 90% is really like the category to play in that game where you're just playing as Meat Boy in that fun, fast. There's like 90 levels that you go through in that run, so like a pretty high amount of levels, but also really fast. The average time of a level is like 6 seconds in that. So, um, that's a fun one. You're just going through each chapter. There's 20 levels in a chapter. You need to beat 17 of them. There's some fun routing, and it's not that fun. I mean, you're just exiting maps sometimes where there'll be a long level and you're skipping over it to play shorter levels, beating the bosses. It's pretty, for the most part, straightforward, which is why it's really good for like a beginner speed run. Just in general, whether you're going into Meat Boy, whether it's your first speed run or you've speedrun a ton of things, it's just a really easy category to get into. It's not an easy category though to get a top time, like at all. Where the game is at from a top time is that you're basically going for these strats that would be not very long ago considered IL strats, and you have to get those. You could maybe save yourself if you're going for all of those, like get a one death in them, but you're legitimately saving like 0.3 seconds. And there's 90 levels, so in theory, saving 0.2 over like 20 of those, that's saving you 2 seconds, sure, but then you have to not die. Your consistency has to be there, and that's really difficult. Saving those 0.2 seconds on these levels is basically like you're doing things that are just so precise that it seems unrealistic. But there's some people that have it. Like Zytho is one that's he's sort of grinding that a bit, sort of off and on. I'm not entirely sure if he's actively grinding it right now, but he's always in the background. There's 3 people with a 1727 in that. I am at a 1737. But when I got into AGDQ, it was any percent with a all light levels like upgrade incentive. The all light levels one didn't get met, so it was just any percent, which was fun. That was a good fun category. Really shows off how like fast paced that game is. Where you can't really linger or like explain anything individually. But what I thought is maybe this will get me like motivated to like grind for world record and that, and I just was like, no, that would the path forward for that one is there. For me to do that, the desire to do it just is not. It's what's so frustrating about any percent is that there is one boss that's in this 17 and a half minute run is like 14 minutes into it, called Larry. And it's just RNG. There's a manipulation strat that helps your RNG a little bit, but it's just RNG. There's basically a 10% chance that you get perfect RNG. There's a 25% chance that you lose 3 seconds on it, and anything beyond that, and your chance of getting world record's pretty slim.
So
Not to
all
say
like
it's
the top
impossible.
times get the 10%, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. My last PB in any percent, which is at this point was like 2 years ago or so. Oh, here, give me 1 second.
That's fine. We've got an intruder. Oh. Yeah, we got the wave back. Let's go.
Here, give me 1 second. My kid is wanting to come in here now. She's mad.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, I should have had the door locked anyways, but
The
whatever.
feature.
That's a rookie mistake.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? I was talking something about Larry, right?
Yeah, the RNG, the 10%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like my PB was like 1751 before I PB'd by like 14 seconds. So in theory, there I could have gotten, if I got like a 4 cycle that loses about 6 seconds, still would have PB'd. But how frustrating is that? That one was. It was a good run. There was still a lot of mistakes in there, but it was one where all of the other runs above me are they have deaths. I think world record has 2 deaths. I think the one before that has 2 deaths. I think that the third place run has like 1, and then mine doesn't have any. And it's not because it was like mine was actually better. I had a ton of mistakes. I just didn't die. It was actually really sloppy. It was like a week or so into a derust, and I just sort of lucked out into not dying. But I lucked into a 2 cycle. But that's sort of how it is with Meat Boy. Is before that I had grinded like going for any percent for that 3x, but I think that I stopped because of a marathon ride to switch categories. But it can be very frustrating to have the best run of your life to just lost to RNG, because even in that 1 week derusts or 2 week derusts where I got that PB, it wasn't like that was the best run I had gotten. That wasn't the only run that was even like deathless going into Larry. I had gotten paces that would have been like a 17:27 pace. It probably would have ended up being more like a 17:29 because I probably would have lost a little bit of time in end or so. But it's like you can get paces there, but in order to really like get record in that game, you need to consistently be well ahead of the pace that you want. You will. It is very difficult in any percent for you to have like a quote unquote perfect run. It's just not going to happen. If you do, it is. It's like a 10% chance of it happening. You have to sort of luck into it.
Mm-hmm.
And even like slightly, close to perfect with the 3 cycle, again, that's still 25% chance that that's going to happen. So it can be very frustrating. And that's really what gets people, I think, out of, that's what gets people to not grind it as much, as they get very frustrated by losing runs to Larry. I said it during my HEDQ run this year, but it was like, if you're like above a 20-minute time, Larry's really not your limiting factor. Like that RNG might kill some runs of yours, but you have so many avenues of improvement, and you should look there. I never tell that to anybody who just lost a run to Larry. That's not the play. But there's a lot of room for improvement in any percent that a lot of people never hit, because they do just have that frustration when it comes to losing time to RNG, which is understandable. You have to be a certain amount of patient to really grind it, but that's any percent.
Yeah, I'm an avid RNG hater, so.
Yeah, then that probably would not be for you. There's some other RNG in the game, but that's the only one that really affects it. There's like a character that the zombie boys that are RNG, but those are like manipulatable. There's only one level 2 where they really matter. So
I
that's
play
kind
Mario
of nice.
1 where there is no RNG and it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that must be nice.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not too big or too against RNG in terms of like, I guess my opinion on speedrunning is mostly like, I don't speedrun in terms of, I think I'm not trying to speak for your opinion. I think a lot of people go into speedrunning in like an esport aspect of it where not to say that I don't like the competitive nature of speedrunning, because I do. I don't care about the like you're not RNG sort of kills your run. That to me is whatever. I'm speedrunning a game because I like that game and I want to keep playing that game. And being able to have a goal that is like achievable in that. If I even if the game is like technically perfect from a speedrunning aspect, but I just don't love that game, I'm just not gonna run it at all. You know, even with like Celeste, I really like that game. I really like love watching that game speedrun, but I think about that speedrun, and what frustrates me about that is you have so many, like that game compared to Meat Boy. Meat Boy is kind of free flowing. You know, it's kind of it's kind of like jazz a little bit. That's a little bit like of maybe a cliche in describing things, but it's really, you're not going to be doing things exactly the same, like precise to the frame and to the pixel all the time, because you're going to be doing things just slightly different. And so there's a lot of adapting, there's a lot of like micro adjustments. There's things in that game like there's rockets that shoot at you, but they're on frame rules. So
Oh.
they're not going to shoot at the same time when they see you. Sometimes it's going to be much later, sometimes it's going to be earlier. And you have to adapt to that. And that can be frustrating. Or, you know, you made like a very minor, what I would even not really qualify as a mistake, but you're just a few frames later on something. So then something you have to adapt to the fact that maybe you jumped off of that wall a little bit slow this time. So now you're a little bit slower on a cycle. So you need to do, you know, XYZ. In Celeste, that game is almost like routed in a way where that type of stuff doesn't really happen. You're just doing the strat and doing it correctly. And you have a few frames or pixels where you have room to do the strat, but that game's very procedural. There's a lot to learn as well. You know, for a 30-minute run, that like a 30-minute Meat Boy category is a lot less dense than a Celeste category. Celeste is such a great speed run, and I really respect the people who learn it, but that is such a dense speed run that it's one where like, is that game probably better from like a competitive aspect because there's no RNG and there's nothing really that's like any mistake you make is like absolutely your fault? Sure, yeah. Yeah. With Meat Boy, that's not the case. That game's a little bit buggy. You know, it's a 2010 indie game made by two developers. There's things called wall slides where if you jump off of a wall the first frame, and you have some like weird, I'm not entirely sure how it even works, momentum, you'll, instead of jumping off of a wall, you'll actually jump as if you jumped off of the ground and go like straight up, and that can just kill you. It's such a weird thing that I don't know why it happens, but it does. And you know, it's frustrating when that kills. Especially, I've had a few deaths on in deathless attempts where I've gotten a a slide up and it kills me, and it's like, well, sure, there's some, you can prevent it by not jumping on the first frame every single time, but easier said than done, honestly, on that one. So a long detour into saying I don't mind that stuff when I find that the game in and of itself is a really I think that Meat Boy is really good to it's really easy to improve on, and there's so many different places to improve, and there's like an infinite amount of time I feel you can save. So um that's something I like about it, but in a way that's sort of, you know, weird when it comes to speedrunners. I think a lot of people want to go in there and improve and feel as though they're the, you know, all their inputs, if it's perfect inputs, they're getting perfect outputs, and that's just not the way that it is with Meat Boy. Which can be frustrating. That game's weird. There's also something as well where there's like the 2 frames will be, I believe it's 2 frames or 17 milliseconds and one is 16, but maybe it's the other way around.
Oh.
But that can affect how things work because a lot of the game is based off of frame rate. That's how it times things. So you have very strange interactions in that game because of it. And that's what could even cause some things like slides and other things, is just weird frame timings. So that's not even technically RNG, but it is stuff that affects the run. And that, I think, can frustrate people because they're like, why did this happen? And then you explain it to them and they're like, so you're telling me there's not much I could have done? And you're like, well, I'm not saying that, but yes, that's correct. That run can be very frustrating, especially when you're talking about at a high level. If you're trying to get a sub 18, which is extremely hard, you are talking about needing a certain amount of perfection, and knowing that you can technically do something that is correct but get the wrong output can be. I think that most sane people are like, I'm just gonna run something else, but I find it really fun. So that's where I have with that one. I've run like every category in that as well. I think the in my opinion, the best category in that game is 106%. I think for a large amount of games, actually, the best category is the full completion category. And I think that sometimes they get ignored. Even myself, for a bit, was like, I'm not sure if I really want to run that. And then I did run it, and I was like, oh, this is actually kind of a banger. 106 just being everything that there is in the game. What makes that really intimidating is that for most of the categories in the game, you're just using Meat Boy, but Meat Boy is a very unique game in the sense that it has guest characters, and the guest characters are not just skins. They all have unique movement mechanics. So it has like the kid from I Want to Be the Guy has a double jump. It has, another character, Ogmo, from the Flash game Jumper back from like 2005, also has a double jump. It's got like a plethora of characters. And the most notorious one is Nyjah, where Nyjah is a character that has a dash, and the dash basically you once you touch the ground, the walls, or the ceiling, basically any surface, you get your dash back, and that can make you do things extremely fast. From an IL perspective, Nyjah goes crazy. Like some levels that take Meat Boy like 8 seconds, Nyjah can do in like 2 without doing anything that would be considered even like a glitch. And then there's things where Nyjah can clip through walls, which is honestly not as easy as it sounds. It seems like you're kind of like spamming, like hitting against the wall until you just go through, but you're actually trying to line up like a very specific frame window off of a wall and then going through it. And then once you do that, you have a 33% chance of getting the clip, which is based off of that frame timing I was talking about just a bit ago. I believe when you have the 16 millisecond frame, that's when you get the clip, and the 17, if you hit the wall during those, you don't get it. But so in theory, you get it a third of the time. In reality, you get it less because you're probably going to mess up your frame window on that one. And there's things called super dashes that give you like more speed off of a dash, but those are frame perfect, so those can be very difficult to get consistently. The easiest way, in my opinion, at least, to get it consistently is to do like what's called a 1 frame dash, to where the way that Nyjah works is, unlike a lot of dash characters in games, you press the dash button and they dash. This one, you press the dash button and you actually go into this little bubble that slows you down, and then you can let go of it, and then they dash. And that lets you like float down in areas. It's like really, honestly, really cool. But if you don't get into that bubble because you are on 1 frame just standing there on the ground, and the next frame you're dashing, if you can do that, you go much quicker. And I found the easiest way to do that is to just press the dash button for a single frame, which very difficult, but is actually pretty doable. But it's intimidating for a lot of people, but especially because like I first learned Nyjah in 106 in like one different chapter of that game. It took me like a couple hours to actually like save time on the chapter as a whole, which is not very much time at all. That's actually extremely quick. But then it sort of lets the cat out of the bag a little bit, because with Nyjah, you're going to die a lot more. It's just a much faster character, and that leads you to accidentally dashing and having the wrong direction pressed, or you dash, in a different place, and you go off some geometry and you die and mess up. And it's also not one where you're really wanting to do a lot of Meat Boy is very much if you're off, you can probably save the level by just adapting, but you don't want to do that with Nyjah. That's you're gonna have a bad time if you try to do that. Um, so it leads a lot of people out of that, but that run rules. That run is so fun. There's a lot there's RNG in it, but because it's so long and there's so much place for time save that it doesn't feel as bad. I will say though that some people argue the RNG is not as bad. The RNG in 106 actually probably affects the run even more, because not only do you have Larry, you have these things called Glitch Girl, and there's basically like a 50% chance that they pop up as you're playing through the chapter. There's like, it's RNG on whether or not Bandage Girl at the end of a level after you beat a boss pops up looking glitched, and that gets you a bonus level. It's like a 50% chance that you get that to pop up, and over the course of 5 different chapters, that's honestly pretty. You have to be pretty lucky for that to happen.
And you need it because
that's basically the 6 in 106. There's 6 different ones. In the first 5, you have 20 levels basically to grind for, or not grind for it, but to get before it happens. And so once you get it, you get a bonus level. If you didn't do any of those glitch levels, you'd get 100%. But there's those 6, and that gives you the 6 in 106.
I see. Okay.
The worst part about it is in the end. So just basically the last part of your run, you have I said it was 50%, but that's kind of a lie. It's a 15% in that specific chapter, which makes it so much worse, to where you can be like a minute ahead going into the last split, and it's not a guarantee at all. Despite that chapter being relatively easy from a speedrun perspective, it can die just because of RNG. So that makes it a lot more frustrating, especially when that's like an hour and 10 hour, 15-minute run, where RNG is just there at the very end deciding your run. But the thing about that is there's probably like, if you're not sub 120 in that one, it's absolutely not RNG's fault. Like, it'll kill some of your runs, sure, but like there's like, even the world record in that one is it's just above a 110, an hour and 10 minutes. It could be lowered. It just, world record holder has not grinded it down in a couple of years. And the ability with Nyjah is so difficult to use and can be used at such a high level that there's not really a lot of people, myself included, that have really grinded that amount of Nyjah that it takes to really get a top time on it. And that's really like where that category is being like a Nyjah ILer. If I wanted to get my time down, which I could get it down by like probably a minute without even adding anything, but just would need to, play better and have good RNG, but probably never going to do that again. But yeah, that category rules. One of the great ones. I think that it's, from like a viewer perspective, it's wild because of how fast it goes, and you get to see everything, and you get like the difficult like Cotton Alley levels, which is the bonus levels at the end of the game. You get to play that with you get to play through those, which is kind of rare when it comes to speedrun categories of that game. But very much worth it. Very, 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 very fun game. And those are like the 2 categories that I would say are like the big ones when it comes to that game. There's other ones like all light levels and all dark levels are like you're playing through as it sounds. The light levels with Meat Boy. Light levels being, if you just go to the map, those first 20 that you see are light levels, and you can unlock dark levels by beating those after like, there's like a A+ time. If you beat it those, you unlock the dark version of the level, which is like a harder remixed version. All dark levels beats those. Those are cool because it's just like all Meat Boy the whole time. But not as cool as 106.
Can you beat the game without ever visiting Dark then?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what you do in any percent. You never beat
Oh,
the
you never
dark
visit
levels.
Dark. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Strangely enough, they don't even count for. You have to beat 17 levels to unlock the boss, but that doesn't even count for the boss in those. So it's not like, oh, well, this level's really fast in, you know, dark. It
Mm.
it literally does not matter.
Yeah.
Um,
Why
so you,
is it just in the game like, oh, beat 17 unlocks boss, do whatever
yeah,
level or
I guess it has it programmed to where the light and dark is different. No idea
I
why.
see.
I thought that maybe I don't think that it would actually have anywhere where it saves time, but I thought maybe. No, it doesn't. It actually does check for some reason. I don't, not entirely sure why. Um, I think maybe in like, what is, no, it wouldn't save anytime anywhere. But yeah, for like any percent, you don't go there. There's a level dark ending because there's a dark version of the final boss as well, which is kind of underwhelming. Honestly, it is way too similar. It is harder, but not drastically so. Um, that one you just need to beat 85. You need to beat 85 dark levels. So, um, yeah, that category is fine. It's actually one of my least favorites just because it doesn't really differentiate itself too much. 106 is just better. And then like the last category that I'll talk about that rules is I'm the only one who's ever completed a run of this because it's kind of like a silly category. Not silly in the terms of like watching it and talent level, but silly in terms of like being able to even complete it is all Steam achievements. Um, that requires you to go through like the light levels of a chapter 1 through 20, beat those deathless. The dark levels and all of those 1 through 20, beat them deathless. Like you can do it technically like, 4 through 20 and then 1 through 3. You don't have to do it in order. If you die, you don't have to start from level 1. You can, keep going. If you died on level 20, just do level 20 and then 1 through 19. Um, once you get to like light and dark cotton and then dark rapture, those it comes really hard. Takes a lot of people when they're grinding for those, right, it takes them days to get those. A lot of people going for like the dark cotton deathless achievement, it'll take them 15-20 hours to do that, and that's if they're really good at the game. It takes a lot of practice and dedication to even be able to complete that run. So the first time I did that run, it took me like 6 hours because I was like prepared, but kind of not super prepared. Next run I did was 3 hours, which I was really proud of. Like a year later, I went back to it and got in like 2 hours and 10 minutes, 2 hours 15. And then I started being like, you know what? I could probably actually beat the game deathless. I should go for that. That'd be crazy. Who knows if I'll actually get it? Who knows if I'll be successful on it? Haven't so far, but gotten pretty close. And now I've been doing that run like once a week, basically every Friday. I plan on just going through that because it's good practice for 106 Deathless, anyways. Because it really is just you're doing 106 to get the rest of the achievements. The hard ones are the deathless ones. Everything else is just 106. So it's good practice. And I got it down to what was it, like a 141 the other day, but lost like 4 minutes on the last split too. So that's one where I want to get it down to sub 140. I know I can get it under like an hour and 35 minutes, but that I could even probably get it down to under 130, but that run would be sort of a miracle in a lot of ways. In theory, you could get that as quickly as you could do 106, add like 2 minutes because there's a like a um online chapter you have to beat that's not technically part of the game. But you know, that in theory that category could really go down in time, but it's probably I would be surprised if it ever went below like considerably below like an hour and 30 minutes just because um one death can set you back 5 minutes, and so you play a little bit, not a little bit, you play a lot safer, and because of that I think it's naturally just going to be like 10-20 minutes. But yeah, no one else has gone for it. There's probably like 2-3 other people that could probably have realistically done that in under like 3 hours at another point. I hope someday somebody goes for it because it is a lot of fun. Actually, it is more fun than you would think to try to do that. Works pretty well for that game. It is like this great combination really of challenge run and speed run. But just waiting for somebody to actually go for it, I guess.
And then leads to the current pig project, which is 106, but 0 deaths at all.
Yeah. Yeah, which I I am every day getting better at that, getting closer. That's one where I really like am trying to focus on getting my practice habits there so that I can really get it. You know, the tough thing about that is that, and it's really the reason why I didn't want to grind 106 speed runs more, is that there's like 300 something levels when it comes. Actually, I can do the math really quick. There's 6 chapters that have 20 levels, technically 40. And so, you know, that's 240 levels. Plus you have 4 warp zones per chapter that have 3 levels. So that's 12 extra levels. That's only the first 5 worlds though. So that's an extra 60 levels. So that's what, 300. And then you have the end, which is a shorter chapter that has 10 levels. So it's like 310. Plus you have 7 different bosses. Plus you have 6 glitch levels. So it is like 320 or so levels in that game. You're just not going to stay practice on everything. The last week or so, I got to the furthest I'd ever gotten to, which was the hell glitch level, which is 92% of the way through it. And I had a death on it. I don't remember the last time I had died on that level, but it was one where I wasn't like, what, how could this even happen? It was one where it was like, oh, I haven't practiced this like at all. I didn't even consider the need to practice this level. It wasn't like I choked. It was just, I made a mistake because I didn't understand fundamentally that I need to watch out for a specific thing and I could be slow. It was basically, I just did it vibes based before that, where it was like, as long as you go fast, you're fine. But sort of not true. And so it's sort of trying to get everything practiced and comfortable and well understood. The hardest part of that run is there's basically 3 really tough chapters in a row. There's Light Cotton, Dark Cotton, and then Dark Rapture. I try to do those as early as possible. And then finish the game, because in theory, right, if you do the things that are, you know, you have less of a chance to do, if you do those earlier, then you're going to get more runs. And so the more runs you get that are like on pace, the more likely you are to actually get your run, compared to getting runs super late and spending more time on it. You know, you're just going to get fewer runs. So that's really the struggle on it, is there's so much to practice. There's so much to practice that, you know, feels like I have to practice like Dark Cotton, Light Cotton, Dark Rapture every single day to get runs through that, which I've only gotten through it deathless through that one time. But my hope is that I can get the rest of the game, which is Dark Hell, Dark Salts, Dark End, to get those at like a 75% chance I get through it deathless, 75% chance I get through Dark Salts deathless, and then like a 90% chance that I get through Dark End deathless. Because then at that point, that's like a 50% chance that I get it when I get through it. But I will say, when I got to Dark End and I was deathless, I was not expecting to get all the way through that, so I really was not fully practiced on the end game. But it is difficult to have that like consistency to get through those deathless at such a high percentage, while also being prepared on like the hardest part of that game. It really is. There's just so many levels in that game. And me describing all this, you may even notice I didn't talk about the first half of the game at all. That's all just sort of an assumption that I'm able to get there. You do naturally in runs like play those more anyways, so that's probably fine. But again, like half of the game, I'm just considering to be, well, I'll get through it and then get to the hard part, which that's still probably like a third of the time at best that I'll be able to get to Light Cotton and be deathless. Because there's like the Kid Warp Zone. If you've ever played the game, you know that it's very notoriously extremely hard. But even then, I just like assume that I'll get past it. But that doesn't always happen. It is very, very, very hard. But yeah, hopefully that'll happen. It does feel like it could be any day, but it also is extremely hard. So maybe it'll be months, but I'm pretty dedicated to it at this point. Hopefully I've been trying to do it for a while, but as I've been saying, I don't stream super consistently. So basically something would pop up and I'd be like, oh, I'm not, you know, I don't really, I didn't stick to it as much. And now I'm much more dedicated to it. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that happens soon.
And you said your PB's what, 3?
3, yeah. And that was one too where two of those, I have like what I would consider stupid deaths, which is basically me just not having the sort of like, you have to, the hardest part about that too is you have to be locked in like the whole time. And one of the things that leads me to not getting to like the hard part of the run is that I will just take like a stupid death.
Yeah.
Like I was doing runs of it last night and I had like 3 deaths on things that just like should never die to. But I took those deaths because I just was not really paying that much attention. But yeah, it's 3. 2 of those deaths I would say were pretty stupid, like not locked in deaths. So in one way, that's actually kind of nice because, you know, those should be easy to fix. But you know, it takes like an hour and a half minimum to do that run. So it's, you know, easier said than done.
Yeah. And how long does it like take ish?
Yeah, like if generally it'll probably take me like an hour 45 plus or minus 10 minutes, just depending on how long. Like last night I did one, but there was like the worst NBA trade in the history of the world that happened. So I was like not super focused on it after I took it. Actually, it went pretty far. It went pretty far without taking a death, despite me being just like looking on Twitter and going through things. So that run probably took me like 2 hours. But in general, it's probably like an hour 45 to go through it. So it's long enough. If I were to just like not mess around and just like go through it, it'd be like an hour and a half or so. And nothing too bad. Which does bring it back to like all achievements. Technically, if I were to do Deathless, it would be like an all achievements record, but there's still like a thing on top of that. And you have to reset your achievements every single time for that. So I'm not about to do that.
So,
but it's always something that people ask.
a lot of you got to do a lot to be perfect. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
So yeah, understandably difficult.
Yeah.
No arguments here. Wow. Yeah, I need to play the game more than an hour. I don't even remember when I played it, but
yeah, it's tough. It's fun. It's frustrating. You know, you can't let the game get to you. It really is. Like I compare it to like Celeste, where Celeste is a game that wants you to beat it. It like encourages you to beat it. Super Meat Boy is like, you know, you pause the game and like the antagonist of the game, Dr. Fetus, is like flipping you off and stuff. And that's what the game is sort of just trying to like make you mad. It very much is like a rage game kind of thing.
But that's the charm of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I just find it interesting, like the game, you know, you can do really difficult strats for 0.3 time save, and there's frame rules. Same SMB, really.
Yeah, there's also fast acceleration. I believe it works the same exact. I believe it works the same exact way. There's like 2 levels where people have like tied the tasks on that game because it's legitimately just like you do a fast excel and then you hold a direction and jump. But it is actually a lot like Super Mario Bros. In a lot of ways. The fast acceleration thing was the one where I was like, "What the hell? No way!" But yeah, it has fast excel.
That's
works
crazy.
The exact same way.
That is crazy. Wow. And people are tying the tasks in ILs and same thing.
But only a couple of them because
No,
it's yeah.
I'm joking for the most part, but it is the parallels do fascinate me. That's a lot more than I was expecting.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that there's not more that are even like a frame off. A lot of them are like actually 2, 3, 4 frames off. But that might sound like, oh, they're not particularly optimized. No, don't let me try to like make it sound as though there's a lot of it is very difficult to be frame perfect in that game. There's just a lot of different things to I guess even me saying that frame perfect is a little bit misleading because there's also like pixel perfection that leads to that not happening either. Because if you just jump on the wrong pixel, then you're just like a little bit lower, and so that it's it's a very precise game. In terms of like RTA, full game stuff, that doesn't really matter. But when it
Yeah.
comes to like IL stuff, that it gets really precise. There's some really really good times and really good ILers as well. The game has like I'm not a big ILer personally, but
Yeah.
there've been some people that really take that seriously and they got some really impressive times.
The game has an in-game timer, right?
Yeah,
Is
it has
is
an
it
in-game timer
accurate?
for yes,
Okay.
but
Okay.
um it is very accurate and it works. But technically if you watch a replay it has an in-game timer and that one's off. But we just ignore it. So
Okay.
but everything that shows up like on the map it'll give you your best time. But yeah, for ILs it has an in-game timer and it's very good and that's what's used. You just can't pause the game while you're doing it, but that's kind of for like glitch reasons.
hmm
Well, I guess there's multiple reasons for that, but um yeah, the in-game timer is used for ILs and it's really nice and it makes it really easy for that one. And also the game saves every single time you get like a best new time. So even though the timer goes away immediately when you touch Bandage Girl, it also save immediately. So you're like, ooh, let's go. I got a PB.
Hmm.
So that's kind of nice.
Good visual cue for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So he just keeps track of all of them on like the home screen. But
Yeah.
what's broken about replays then?
I don't know. It's just
Oh,
zero
okay.
point 0.1 second off every time. Sometimes it's like 0.08 and sometimes it's like 0.12. That's only if you get like a lag, but in general it's 0.1 seconds off every single time. No
Huh.
idea why. You can save replays in that game, but they're not they don't actually save it very well. It just puts a replay of Meat Boy over the top of a level, so it doesn't actually give you an accurate replay or anything. So you like, not that that's a particularly like crazy rule, but on the leaderboards you have to have it to where it's your actual gameplay and not the replay
Hmm.
um, on it.
Like, is the playback still accurate?
The playback's accurate, but it's one of those like there's a bunch of something that people will do. Like there's a glitch that uses Steve from Minecraft is in the game as a playable character, and he can like
Okay.
get rid of blocks or add blocks into the game. If you show up on a replay, those blocks actually are not there. They're just completely gone. It just shows the level as it would be. So technically, like those are ways where you can like make the game easier for yourself and it not be noticeable. So it's not that the
Hmm.
replays are wrong. It's just that it's not. There's there's some shenanigans that could happen with it. So they're it's not used for the most part. It's fine, but it's just not the best replay. So we don't use it.
No, no, that's just fascinating. What a
Yeah.
weird issue to have in multiple ways. But
The game was like, especially before release, it was the game was rushed in a lot of ways. They had a commitment to like midway through development to release the game on Xbox Live on a certain date, and so they were really rushing the final couple months of that game. So those types of things in context makes a lot of sense. These days, something that like really does blow my mind is these days all of these things would be updated. Like that game would have been continually updated and gotten like more content and all of that. And then that game is just kind of like there was like an April Fool's Day update that added a character Potato Boy. I don't even know the context of it. Oh, there was also an update that added the character Tofu Boy.
mm,
And that's basically it. That was it. A lot of the bugs and stuff that are in the game were just like never fixed, which actually there was an update. I say all this, there was an update like 4 or 5 years ago. And that just fixed that game needs to run at 60 frames per second on speedrunners run on what's called OG version, just original version. And that update makes it to where you have to run or you can run the game on any like frame rate computer. It's still going to run at 60 frames per second, but if you like the bane of any Meat Boy runner's existence is a monitor that's not 60 hertz because it's just going to be such a pain in the ass to get that to be properly, like, no latency, no issues. Game's kind of weird. And I complain about all of this, but then I think, and there's an update that fixed that issue. It fixes issues with, like, conveyors can sometimes you land on them with around certain geometry and you just blow up and die. That's fixed. The frame timing thing is fixed, so every single frame is actually like 16 milliseconds, which makes the nausea clipping really consistent. There's a trick called auto jump that we use that makes you jump every single frame. I don't even think that was patched on purpose, but that was patched. There's like a timer glitch thing where you can pause the game and do some menuing and then the timer doesn't start, so it sticks at 0. That was patched. Like, there actually was one, but now that I think about it, this is one of these where I say something and I realize, oh, I have speedrunner brain. I'm only thinking it through the context of my speedrunner experience, not the actual game as a whole.
Classic mistake. So, is that like the kind of version that's on modern platforms now? Is the more fixed version then?
Yeah, there's some differences between, like, that version is similar to basically the version got released for PS4 and Wii U and Switch and stuff like that. And that's the version that, honestly, if you're playing it casually, you should play. There's no reason to do it unless you are interested in speedrunning and stuff like that. And then it's really easy on Steam to just go. It's in the, like, properties and betas. It's just a drop down. You don't need, like, a password or anything. You just go in there and you can play it. And nice and accessible in there, fun to use. For a casual player, probably not useful at all. I feel like basically anybody that goes in to speedrun Super Meat Boy shows up in the Discord saying, going in the tech support area and being like, hey, I'm having this issue, and then we try to help, but it's so reliant on very specific hardware that it's hard to be extremely helpful.
Yeah, hardware issues are the best.
Yeah, they really are.
This is why I'm a console runner, because all consoles are pretty much the same. Makes it easy.
Dude, every cartridge base, I guess not Switch, because Switch also has digital stuff, which makes it a little bit weird, but, like, the old school cartridge base stuff, like, that is just the best way to speedrun. Like, I think, like, absolutely, like, inarguably,
it's
to
the
me, it's the
easiest
best
way, at least.
It's the easiest, it's the best. Like, this, everything's there. You just literally plug it in and then you just run the game and it's fine. There may be some frustrations with, like, oh, you need the very specific version of that to run, but even then, just get, like, gosh, what's it called?
EverDrives?
EverDrive. Get a flash cart, and then that's, like, not an issue at all. Really is the best way to run. You don't have to worry about, I hate load time stuff. I hate it so much.
Yeah.
It's really annoying. That's annoying to deal with, especially on disc-based consoles where it's like, ooh, I got a slow load this time, and you're like, oh, that sucks. You can't even control when you're gonna get a good load.
I mean, I'm all for, like, removing load times.
Yeah, sure, but
and that's easier on PC because it can be, like, built into the program. But yeah.
It's still a headache that you don't have to worry about on cartridge-based consoles.
True.
It really rules, you know? Really rules.
It's funny with, like, 2J, it's Famicom disk system, so it's a disk based technically. So it does have varying load times depending on the platform. So you have to remove them. But it's
amazing.
Literally just Mario 1 essentially. So it's just funny.
I didn't know that. I guess that makes sense, actually. I never really considered that all that much. That is funny. Yeah, anything disc based for anything. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you know, would be better if everything just had the same, ran the same, loaded the same. That's the dream. And a reason why the just old school cartridge based runs are just, people say, like, oh, Celeste is easy to get into. It has, like, I guess in-game timers, right, are the things that, like, sort of goes against that. But even in-game timer has weird things where you're basically, like, I'm sort of a hater on something that saves in-game time but doesn't save real time. Like, it's actually considerably slower real time. Like, there's things in Celeste where you'll do, like, a save and quit and it's real time, like, at best 5 seconds slower, but it saves, like, a few frames in-game time, and it's just like, this is stupid. I hate this so much. But I mean, they're right to do it. That is the rules, to get the lowest in-game time, you know? Doesn't make sense to ban it, you know?
Yeah, no. And you can
Still a
always
hater of it.
separate the two.
Yeah. And I guess there's like I don't know that much about Super Metroid, but I understand that like if you're going for in-game time in Super Metroid, you do things a little bit differently, but
Hell, that just
I'm not gonna.
happened. Like, a new minute barrier was just broken in Super Metroid in game time, but it's 2 minutes slower RTA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that just happened.
Gotcha. I saw that there was even like a who was it? Just the any percent in general was just broken as
Yeah,
well. So
Zenny just did that. It like
yeah,
obliterated it too. It was crazy.
it was like I saw that his PB was like 20 seconds or so. I didn't even check what the world record was before
It was
that, but
40:36 to get 40:22. Yeah.
oh wow,
Yeah, no,
that
that wild.
that's wild. What I know about that game is that it's probably in terms of time save like similar to Super Meat Boy, where like if you're even to save like a second is like it's just not there, and that game's much longer as well.
The record before
To
was
where,
set like at late 2023. So,
yeah,
like, yeah, it's hard to get a completed record pace run. And there
yeah,
you go.
abs- yeah, yeah,
Hell,
that's
that run
wild.
was so fast, almost in in-game time it saved that. It was like, was it 26 was the in-game time that just happened. I think his run was like 27 0 seconds and like 56 frames or something. I
Oh
don't know.
wow,
It's something
wow,
crazy.
that's wild. That is wild. Always love to hear. Sometimes with like games like that, I guess it's really the speedrunner cliche in both sides of being like, oh, whatever category is dead, and then like category is never really dead, but it is sort of a reminder as well. You know, whenever that time that just got set gets beaten as well, it'll feel like that reminder that nothing's ever truly dead. But sometimes it does feel like, you know, such a huge run, and it's like, what the hell? How's anyone even going to beat this time?
Mario 1's quickly getting to the dead point though, but like actually real.
Yeah, that's true. The closer that it gets to that, I guess to give like a hot take on it, the closer it gets to that task until it actually gets it, the less I'm like inclined to really watch it. There is to
Yeah.
me a such thing as just it being too precise to where even if you get into like 8-4 on pace, it's like, oh, okay, dang, the run's dead because they lost 2 frames.
Yep.
Like I'm not even going to be able to notice those 2 frames. That's even, and that would be world record by a ton if someone was able to do that. That's one where it's difficult for me as a viewer to watch SMB any percent sometimes because of that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
literally just saving a couple frames and it's a huge deal. That's all it
yeah,
is.
exactly.
And the
It's fun to
casual
go
can't
and
even notice.
yeah, it's fun to go back and watch the time like afterwards, but like
Mhm.
I used to back in like the Some Wes and
Yes.
Cosmic and all those grinding it. That's when I was super into it because it did feel like, it's just getting all of
There's
the
still second barriers. There's like
yeah,
shit.
exactly. And now it's just a little bit like I respect it, obviously.
Oh yeah.
I'm not trying to say that it's not worth the time or anything. Obviously, a lot of people love watching it and doing it. It's just, you know, my personal thing is one where the it's not as fun as back in the day, which I think sometimes that people like me will exaggerate a little bit on how important that is. It's just
Hmm.
like, who cares? You used to like it back in the day. Okay, sure. You sound like literally
It's
everybody
called
about everything that they
nostalgia.
like. Yeah, exactly.
We all
Who
have it.
cares?
It's fine.
Yep. Yeah, you don't need to pretend like there's like a good reason for it or like it's like a correct opinion or anything. It's just nostalgia.
Hmm. I mean, I definitely feel similar to like I had the most fun watching back then. Although that's when
Yeah,
I first started like knowing what speedrunning was. So it was really new and exciting to me. And it was a
sure.
good time to be there because this shit was actually happening. It wasn't perfect at all yet.
Yeah, and there's like I felt like there was a ton of new names that popped up in that all the time as well.
Like
Um,
me, hello, hi.
yeah, exactly. Felt like before that, there was like very established runners and you know, um, Cosmic and all them, but even like some West getting record then did not feel as though that was like anything. I felt like that was a little bit of like I don't want to say like a surprise as if it wasn't possible or anything. I don't want to be disparaging. Just it was one where I just remember being like, "Whoa, that's cool." I that was not who I expected it to happen, and that's fun when
Mhm.
you can have somebody who it's just like, they come. But then even
If you're knowledgeable, I
nowadays,
totally expected it.
did you
I
gotcha?
I
I mean,
was more surprised it didn't happen sooner.
Sure. And I did watch him plenty too. I wasn't like shocked that he got it. Just one
Yeah.
of those where it was like, you know, it's really fun when it's a non-established. Like I guess he was established. He got a ton of
At
viewers
that
as well.
point, yeah,
People
he
knew who he
was.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one of those where it's not, I guess, sort of your more legacy runners, I guess, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Although, in fairness, he might have been a runner for a long time, and I just didn't know until he was really close to the record time. I don't think that he was like a top 3 runner until necessarily on the leaderboards, but maybe I'm just dead wrong there. Who knows? And again, I'm not trying to be like disparaging on that one too.
When
I
Darbian's 456.8 was still record, he got one frame off, and it's because he got lag frame on the bullet bill glitch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I'm just a casual. I just don't know what I'm talking about then.
No, it's fine. I am the like I have way too much fucking knowledge in my brain about it, so.
No, that's good. That's how I can feel like with like Meat Boy, especially with like I did a any percent world record history video, and so like
Hell
people
yeah.
will bring up stuff and I'll be like, oh well, this is actually the way that it was. So kind of like very obscure information on things.
Nothing wrong with a little fact check.
No, exactly. But yeah, I guess I'm just dead wrong on it. It did feel like it was, but maybe I just was like content brained and being like,
You
oh
didn't
no,
have as much eyes on him until like it really was noticeable.
His last grind, yeah.
Yeah, but again, that's why it's weird it took him so long. He essentially tied Darbian's record, but he got a lag frame, so it was 1 frame slower, and then it took until like a year later and 0.6 seconds faster of a run to actually like officially hold it. It was just weird.
Sure, that makes sense.
Because in that time, Darbian improved again, Cosmic improved it again, and then he came through finally.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I probably came in after like Cosmic and Darbian, and then I think even there was some other people there that were like.
There was a Taven in there.
Yeah,
we remember Taven.
Exactly, and that's probably where I was coming in and thinking like some West was coming from this side, when in reality he was always like right here.
Yeah, he was right there.
Exactly. Cool.
Good times. I do miss the times, but that's just nostalgia talking.
It's still super exciting, and there's still a bunch of people going for that as well, you know, and for the there's a lot of exciting things. I'm just a boomer, I guess, you know.
Hey, I'm still hanging on to top 10 even though my run's almost 4 years old now, which is nice. Weird to think about.
Yeah, that's true, especially with how many people run. That's one of those where I've considered one time being like, oh, I should go for like sub 5 Mario. Doesn't even seem to be like that bad these days.
I still say anyone can, if they like put in the time and effort, it takes a week. That's all you need. It's 1 week.
Nice.
Hell, Microvita did it in a day. That's real. So
that's wild.
Totally possible. That was a 12-hour challenge type deal in a day though, but still.
Sure.
Like you spread that over
that's
a
wild.
week. Like,
Was he doing like a flagpole glitch stuff, or was it? Okay.
Sub 5 doesn't require any frame perfect anything.
Oh, I know it doesn't. It seems like going for it though might be. I don't know about that. I don't know much about learning that, but it seems like at least going for like the 1-1 and like 4-1 might make sense to do. But
no, not for sub 5. You don't worry about a flagpole glitch until 456. Like literally, don't even touch the trick at all. You do not need it. So
makes sense. Feels like it's not too bad. Well, actually, no. The 4-2. I like tried to learn some things on it, but like even the 4-2 stuff is kind of.
I mean, learning it for fun's fine, but like it's not like run implemented.
At one point, I had it in my brain to like do all of the Mario like any percent stuff on the NES, and then I realized I didn't want to do that. But that was only like, yeah, that was like a week of barely practicing stuff, as well. And Mario 3 is what killed it. That runs so many auto scrollers
and RNG. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but because the game is great, that's why people play like Warpless and Hundo so much. Oh my god.
Yeah,
so good.
I even considered that, and I was like, oh, that's a lot to learn. But it seems cool.
God damn, that game is good when you actually
that game's great.
It.
More accessible to, well, maybe not accessible is not the right word. A little bit easier to learn than like Super Mario World, like
yeah.
120 exit.
Oh god, yes.
Or however many exit it is, I'm forgetting. I think
Mario
120
World
is the star.
blows my god.
96 exit. There we go. I remembered. I knew I was saying the Mario 64 one, but I was like, maybe this is correct. But yeah.
Yeah. I guess to get back onto the topic of you, kind of go over history of participating in events and stuff like GDQ.
Yeah.
Do you remember
I
your
the
first
first one
event?
Yeah, the first one I ever did was Calithon 2019.
Oh, okay,
Rest in peace,
yes.
Calithon. I really hope that comes back in some sort of capacity. I guess, really to even before I get into my own one, to just on in-person tournaments.
Hmm.
I have been thinking more about. I felt like in 2019 there was a really, I don't know, healthy might not be the right word because I don't understand how those become economical to do at all. But it felt like there was a good amount of in-person marathons. There was like Calithon, Midwest Speed Fest still happens. There was like in the Northeast, it was like NASA or something. I forget what that one was called. Um, there was a lot of them, and obviously the ESAs, a bunch of the speedrun gathering ones in Europe. It felt like there was one happening in person that had like a decent amount of people coming there like once a week. I remember there was one that was supposed to happen in like April of 2020 in like Phoenix or some
Hmm.
Arizona area type thing. And now they're just not there as much. And I looked into like what it would take to really even put one on, and they're just so expensive
Hmm.
that I guess really my point is that if there is a in-person speedrun marathon near you, I'm not saying it's your duty to support it, but you should do whatever you can to like help those, because GDQ is there and basically in a very fortunate position where it is like um maybe not the way it was in, like, it felt like in 2018, 2017, like GDQ was speedrunning. If somebody knew about speedrunning, they knew about GDQ.
Hmm.
And now thanks to, like summoning salts and, your like easy peasies and speedrunning content creators, that's not necessarily the case. They might have never heard of GDQ before,
Hmm.
despite liking speedrun content. But we're very lucky to have GDQ in terms of how big of an event it is, the production quality, and all of that. So,
Oh, yeah.
think whenever I think back of Calithon 2019, it was a very fun experience. It was my first in-person one. I didn't know that many people there, but it was cool to just like people would sit down and watch you like in the practice room and just chat with you, and that was fun. That was, meeting people was really cool. Um,
Did you do a run for that?
I did Meat Boy Any Percent in
Okay.
Calithon 2019. It was like at 4 a.m.
Prime
I
time, baby.
still, yeah, exactly. That was one too where my biggest memory of that event was that they didn't really have like water bottles or anything there, or really a place to get water, like water fountains or anything, because this was done at the like um direct relief headquarters in Santa Barbara.
Mm,
And
okay.
they, whenever somebody would get water, like, things of water bottles, they would go out in like an hour max. But what they did have, because Red Bull was a sponsor, was tubs and fridges full of Red Bull.
Mm.
That, not a problem at all. So I had drinking in a 24-hour period probably like 4 or 5 Red Bulls.
Jesus
And so
Christ.
like after my run on Sunday, I had felt like I get, especially back in the day, I had it more just like social anxiety of being like, and it felt like that. It felt like, oh my gosh, I am so nervous. Like this is like, it's not that big of a deal. Why do I feel nervous? I didn't realize till probably like I was driving home that I was like, oh, this is not anxiety. I drank 5 Red Bulls. My heart is like, why did you do this to yourself? That's just too much caffeine. That's like 1,000 milligrams of caffeine. What are you doing?
Nah.
But I just did not think about it. I was like, I'm a little bit thirsty. Yeah, I can have a Red Bull. That's only like my third. And then I would wake up and I'd be tired. Like, oh, I need a Red Bull for my run. And then it was like midday on Sunday, which my run was like Sunday at 4 a.m. and this would be like 1 o'clock. It's like, oh, I should have another Red Bull, and that was a bad idea. That was my
Yeah.
biggest thing on there. Was now whenever I go to an in-person marathon, I always get like a thing of, even if there's water there, I will get like a case of waters and just leave it in my fridge, or at least go to like a convenience store and get like 4 or 5 waters to put in my fridge there. Or if there's not a fridge, just I'll drink room temp water. That's fine. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Uh, I have not had a 4 a.m. slot since, which, you know, lucky for me. The next marathon thing that I did was I actually the next year I did the Corona Relief Done Quick for GDQ,
Yeah.
which was cool. That was one where I had assumed that was going to be like one of my only GDQ things as well, and maybe that's just like low confidence, but more of just like there's some great runners out there and other ones and all of that. But I thought that was a lot of fun. I on all of my run feedbacks as well, people thought that I was just like fun, engaging. People get really impressed when you're able to play a game and like do your own commentary and talk at the same time, which I find fun. I remember somebody being like, "Oh, I can't believe this guy's doing commentary at the same time. This guy's brain power must be huge." And I'm just like that.
I can't really do
shot up, but
commentary while I play. Like, I feel like my streams are so boring because I'm so quiet all the time because I just have to focus on the game if I want to perform well. That's why I always make sure I have commentary do the work for me when I do my runs.
Yeah,
It works
and
out
I
a lot
think
better.
that's probably better for performance anyways. I think I go back and forth. Sometimes I feel like when I'm just talking about something random, I actually can do really good because I just get in the zone. I'm not thinking about like the game way too intently and making mistakes that could be preventable. But at the same time, like uh, sometimes I think that I get in my own way where I'm trying to, it can be difficult, especially when you're streaming, to like, you not just thinking of what you're talking about, you can sometimes be like, I need to think of something to talk about. And that can be very distracting, and then can make me play worse. So it can be better to just sort of have a more gameplay focused environment. But yeah, and also in terms of commentary, I do think that a big kind of a rookie mistake, even people that are really good at doing self commentary, unless you really know what your vibes are going to be doing self commentary, you should have somebody on your couch, even if they don't know anything about the game. Have someone doing commentary with you that is prepared to talk or react or something. It's not a big deal if they don't know it, because like every single time that I've done it, like my first mainline GDQ was AGDQ 2021, where I did 106%, and I had Fell the Curl and Chai Kitty on comms, and both of them are Celeste runners. I don't even remember if they had played through the game yet. They had watched my stream plenty, so they knew at times to like react. But that was fun. I think my biggest memory of that one was, this was, GDQ chat is sub only. I had a thing that when I grinded 106, especially when I was getting into like the 80s, and like, actually that's, even when you're at a high level, you'll get runs with like 70, 80 deaths. But I would do like in my chat, be like, guess the deaths, you get the exact number of deaths, you get a gift sub. And so before the run, I believe it was Fell that was like, you should do that for this one, but like everybody in chat for GDQ is subbed, so it wouldn't actually work. No one can do it. So I did that at the end. So at the end of my run, I was like, oh, here's what I normally do. Guess the deaths. If you get it right in chat, I'll give you a gift sub. And I gave some thank yous, and then afterwards I was like, oh, wait, I looked at chat. All you guys are already subbed, but congrats everybody who got the right answer. And then afterwards it was like Mike Uyama, who was like, that bit at the end was so good. That was one of my favorite bits. Good job. That was so fun. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. I can't believe that was so awesome. That I think was I think that sometimes people do assume a little bit too much about like a GDQ run and what it means for you as like a speedrunner or anything. But that did sort of make me feel a little bit like fulfilled as a runner to get like, had known who Mike Uyama was just from, watching GDQs and stuff, and to basically get a big compliment for them was awesome. But that run was good. Was a lot of fun. It was like shortly after that too, probably my streaming wise, was doing probably as well as I had done until like very recently, like right now. And then I stopped streaming for a bit to just like, I worked out like 5-6 days a week, and that was awesome. And now I stopped and back to where I was before that. And maybe I should go back to the gym, just maybe not 5 days a week, but like 3 days. But then I just submitted on a whim a bunch of Meat Boy stuff. I hadn't submitted to anything since AGDQ, and I got in all dark levels, which is my favorite category to just grind because there's minimal RNG. It's all Meat Boy. It's basically everything but the warp zone and glitch levels on that. That run was a lot of fun. That marathon though was a bit. So I get there and a
Which
mistake that
marathon
I
is
made.
this?
This is SGDQ 2022.
Okay, got it.
This was the first one back from COVID. So I guess to talk about that one was kind of a weird GDQ.
Yeah.
And
It
it makes me
wasn't
very
ready to come back in person yet.
It wasn't,
It
and
wasn't.
I applaud GDQ for doing it because it was a good. I'm glad that they tried it,
They did, yeah.
but like
It
they
was
had
a good
things
attempt, but
it clearly like their COVID stuff like did not work, and I think they know that. But it was one where like they didn't have like board like any of these like side rooms really, and the practice room was like kind of limited. But what that made people do was just hang out in their hotel rooms more than even other events. And so it was like you're not limiting the actual exposure to COVID. People are just doing it in their rooms instead of out in the open. And that's not a criticism of GDQ more than it is just the reality of doing an in-person event.
Yeah. They tried,
Yeah.
it just the world was not ready, unfortunately. That's just
Exactly.
the truth of the matter.
And it was fun. It's just it was a weird one, and I was like,
It was weird,
yeah. I had my kid, like I guess my wife had our kid like a few months after that as well. So I was like, oh, this might be like the only in-person GDQ that I go to. So that would be a little bit unfortunate. Like it really made me like, oh, I need to go back to that one. But anyways, I show up to that one. I like my run was on the last day in like 10 a.m. on Saturday, which was awesome. That's like, not necessarily the best, but that's, if you give me on the last day,
Pretty
that's
good.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I showed up there. I took like a flight Wednesday and arrived Thursday morning. And that was all fine. The first day I was tired, but it was fine. But then the next day on Friday, I got just the worst headache I've ever had in my life, like just terrible migraine. So I tried to practice a little bit, went into my room just at like 6 p.m. and just like tried to sleep, but woke up just like with a terrible migraine just because my sleep schedule just got like messed up so bad that I got a terrible headache. And so then even in the morning, I just felt really crappy. I thought the run itself was like entertaining enough, but I did not play super well on it. That was one where I had consistently been getting like sub-hour runs in all dark levels at home, and I do think that you should expect to play worse at GDQ. It's just a completely different environment, and I guess for me personally, even if I were to move my monitor like over into my room, it's still in my room, I would probably play worse until I get adapted to it, kind of thing. But I played like considerably worse, and it made me feel a little bit bad about it. But what I already knew it beforehand, but what I really learned there is that nobody knows how bad your run is unless you point it out. And I just made sure to not point it out. And especially with Meat Boy, it's just known to be really, really hard that they just will believe you. I mean, it still is a really good run. I got like a 107 and my estimate was 110, which I just put it really high, but I really could have had it like a 105. I'm really glad I didn't, because the casual people watching just care if it's underestimate, even if the estimate is kind of...
Yeah. It's part of why I like they went sub only. I remember when GDQ chat wasn't sub only. If anyone went a second over, it was always like Monk S pointer finger timer. It's like, shut up, dude. Who cares?
It's so annoying, especially nowadays where people really do feel like there's a good amount of pressure to have a really low estimate, which I don't think GDQ actually cares about, to be honest with you. I think that if they see like a 34 and a 35-minute estimate, they're not going to be like, this person can do it 1 minute on estimate quicker, we got to go with them. But people kind of submit like that. But
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. Long way of saying that marathon was fun, except for the fact I got a massive headache. And I'm never going through on a red eye again. Then I did the next year after that, I did GDQX. I did 106 for that, which I guess I do 106 in a lot of marathons, which makes sense because that run is very fun. It's like an hour and a half. So that seems to be like the peak marathon time is like between like 45 minutes to an hour and a half where it's not too long, but it's not short enough to where you have to like really quickly like bring up a new run. So people really love to put that one in there. That one was cool. That was in Las Vegas for GDQX, which um, was I had gone to Vegas one time before that, and I had kind of a not a high opinion of the city. Felt like a big giant mall for adults who want to like drink and party, and I don't drink or anything like that or gamble really. But there was when I had fun when I was there, got to meet a bunch of people, chat with them. It was fun. What I know too is that every like in-person thing that I go to is people are just extremely nice and friendly and want to get to know you and all that stuff. So that was cool, but it was also the same weekend as like a music festival as well that I got to go to when we were Young Fest, which was cool. So didn't even have to spend a lot of time like in the city. Could just like go do that. So that was fun. And then who knows what I even did in 2024. I guess I didn't really even submit to many marathons. I didn't even stream that much until I got into AGDQ 2025. So just last month I got, again, it was all any percent.
West.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
What
I wasn't trying to be disparaging about that. I legitimately forgot.
That's crazy.
That last year was so busy for me, like work wise, that I forgot. I also submitted to that on a whim, but I will submit to any in-person West Coast marathon. Any of them. If they pop up, the only one time I wouldn't is if it's in like somebody's garage I don't know. You know, I have to make sure that like I know some people there. I'll submit to any of them. But yeah, I submitted to PAX West. That was super fun. What I do there, dark ending. That one bummed me out a little bit because I like to be ultra prepared. And that one, I really was not ultra prepared. I was not underprepared, but it was one where like I got so busy with work like 2 weeks beforehand, like so busy that I just did not have time to practice beforehand, or most of all, practice my commentary, because practicing, like I can do any Meat Boy run, like I could do a 106. I haven't done a 106 speed run in like months at this point, but I could do, well, I guess I've been doing Deathless, so that's 106, so it's not really the same. But I could do like a sub 120 speed run like now. I did a thing for I did a stream basically where Tommy was on there, and I hadn't done a 106 like speed run in a little bit, and I think on that one I got like a 119 or something where I hadn't done a run in a while. So, you know, and even with dark ending, I think my estimate was like 41 minutes, and I got like a 40-minute run. So it was one where like, yeah, I don't need to be 100% prepared and still get my time. But I was also the very first run of that marathon as well, which was interesting. I had never been an opener before, but it was a fun experience. It was cool. I liked Seattle. PAX West itself was something that I learned that like I was there for the whole weekend. If I were to redo it, I would have left Saturday night instead of Sunday night. I thought there was going to be PAX West was just that I sometimes I say this and I feel like maybe I'm being a little bit, again, disparaging, but I don't mean it when I say this. PAX West is not the same nerdy that I am. That's a lot of like tabletop game kind of stuff, like you know, like in-person role play type stuff that I just am not that guy.
I like testing new games and stuff. But.
Yeah, I went on Saturday and I was like playing through a bunch of games, but I just needed a day for that. I even spent like 3 hours in the Zelda line, and I played Zelda, and I learned that I'm never doing that again. That was fun to play Echoes of Wisdom beforehand, but people were like, "Oh, what do you think of the game?" And I'm like, if you've played Link's Awakening, it kind of feels like that. It's a little bit different because of the whole Echoes thing, but you know, if you've played Link's Awakening, you're probably gonna like it. It didn't even feel like it was a very like interesting opinion or anything. So I'll just like, if I ever go to a PAX again, I just know that I'll just, you know, I'll go there for a day or maybe 2 days. But you know, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy PAX. I cannot believe I forgot that, but I honestly do not remember what I was 2024 for just like me at work was so busy that was hard to remember that. But yeah, that was cool. And then yeah, then did AGDQ just a month ago, which was cool. That was the one that I submitted to. Like when I submitted to PAX West, I had a pretty like I was fairly confident in getting in. GDQX, I was pretty confident of getting in, and I got in, and pretty confident. Like I feel like I have like 30% or more. But this last one for AGDQ, I just kind of submitted, and I was like, yeah, whatever. If I don't get in, I don't get in. It's going to Pittsburgh in January. That's not like the number one thing I want to do in my life is go to Pittsburgh in January, but got in. I was actually legitimately shocked. I saw that they released it also, the games list at like 8 a.m. Pacific time, which was awesome because I legitimately got to work. I was going, sitting, just typing some emails. I check my phone. I get like a ping from somebody and they're like, oh, there's like the GDQ games list is out. And they just said that, I think knowing that I was in, but I didn't even consider that that's what they had meant when they DM'd me. And I go and I'm just looking down the list, S being kind of low down there. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. And I was like, Super Meat Boy, what? I got in. What? Which sort of does make, like thinking about it, I submitted that as an any percent with a incentive upgrade to all light levels, which sort of is like, hey, I can help you raise some money with an incentive, which I think helped. But got there, and I think that AGDQ 2025 is like an in-person thing. People were just so nice to me there in a way that I think what had helped as well is that especially the past few years, I on Twitter became a lot more memey, I guess, making a lot more jokes and stuff like that. So people just knew me more from Twitter and wanted to come up and talk to me more and were very nice and very friendly and very supportive of me in a way that I was like, oh, okay, wow, I did not expect, a couple people too. I would feel kind of bad because they'd come up to me and I'd have to like, they knew who I was, to where I was just walking up to me saying, hey, SHREDBERG, and I had to look at their name tag, and I felt like a jerk being like, I don't know who you are. Yeah, exactly. And this is one of these things where like, I just will get anxiety about things that don't make any sense. But that's one of those where I was like, oh, yeah. And they're like, oh, you're, whoever. But that was really cool. People just really love going up, being supportive, hanging out, meeting people that I had. And AGQ was really cool. Because again, with SGDQ 2022, I was a bit worried that would be the only in-person marathon that I would go, like, want to, or not want to, but really be able to go to. But after AGDQ 2025, it was just such a good experience and just meeting people and hanging out and doing whatever that like I have to go to like SGDQ this year for at least a few days and things like that.
We got them.
I need to go back on it. It was so fun. Like it doesn't even matter if I get a run in. I have some things that like I'm thinking about derusting and doing something that would be for the silly block, and who knows if it gets in, but even if it doesn't, just like volunteer and do stuff like that, because there GDQ getting even the like 2,000 people that it got that's so many people that are just there for speedrunning, and just there to go and hang out and play games and do whatever for a full week. I do think that I probably am never going to be the type of person that wants to be there like all 7 days. My run this time was on Monday, and so I had gotten there on Sunday and left on Thursday, and that was like the perfect amount of time for me. I think that if I was there for the full week, I probably would have gotten a little bit bored, but I also have a kid at home and everything, so that makes it a little bit tough to leave her with just mom for a full week. But yeah, it was so fun, and people were really nice and friendly, and yeah, it was really like an unforgettable experience. Whereas SGDQ, I had a lot of fun at SGDQ despite personal reasons of it kind of sucking, but it still was a lot of fun getting and hanging out with people. But that was like half of the capacity of AGDQ, and the arcade there wasn't as cool. There was like no rhythm games and stuff like that. But yeah, I had a super good time at AGDQ. That I need to go back to them, especially one that's like summer to where it's not 20 degrees every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm California, and it's never 20 degrees here. I went back home, and on Friday here in Sacramento, it was like mid 60s, and sunny. Compared to when I left Pittsburgh, it was snowing and like 19 degrees and windy. So it was it was very nice to get back home. No disparaging to the city of Pittsburgh, but I much prefer my 60-degree weather.
Yes,
And then
Minneapolis
it
in the
got
summer is very nice.
yeah. And people also, I remember at SGDQ, people were like, I was wearing like a long sleeved shirt and shorts, and people were like, "Aren't you hot?" And I was like, "Dude, it's 83 degrees outside. That's like this is perfect for a long sleeve tee. What do you mean?" But apparently, for a lot of people, that's 83 is really hot. Where here it gets in the hundreds every single day in the summer, basically. So it's also one of those where I get to go to cooler weather for SGDQ. But yeah, it'll be cool, and plus we'll be able to do more like outside activities. You know what I mean? Everything at AGDQ was like you had to be inside, but for SGDQ, get to actually, I say that for SGDQ, the Twins are playing there, for all week long. So I go to like 2-3 baseball games, depending on when I'm there. I'm excited to do that. I went to a Penguins game at AGDQ, and that was awesome. First hockey game, but no offense to the hockey fans out there, but baseball clears way better. But yeah, that's really there's some like smaller marathons that I'm probably forgetting, like Complete-a-thon. I did a 106 run in and others, but for online marathons, I'm a little bit weird. I don't know about you, because you've done your marathon runs. After runs in general, I have always felt like I want to just like be left alone. You have such like an adrenaline high during the run, and then it ends, and then I'm just kind of like, whew, I need to like go do something else, And in an in-person marathon, you could have friends that just come over, say, "Oh yeah, nice job." You go, you hang out with them, you grab food or something. You go hang out in the practice room and go do something, talk with people, and it's fun. Online marathons, I get that same like feeling afterwards, but I'm just kind of sitting alone in my office being like, well, that was fun. And I kind of just don't like that feel. So I only really submit to online marathons that I'm like really passionate about. Just because of that particular thing that,
I get it. Yeah.
Probably just a me thing, but after runs, I just get very like, the adrenaline crash makes me a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of like to, the in person, kind of like celebrate a job well done afterwards, and alone it's
Exactly.
just like, well, now what?
Yeah.
Business as usual.
Exactly.
Yeah, I haven't submitted online in forever. Not because
Yeah.
I dislike it. It's more just I'm a lazy person. But
Sure. Yeah.
nothing
No, I
wrong
get
with
it.
him.
Yeah, and especially the in-person ones, the idea of getting in is just more fun, especially when you know that friends and stuff are going to be there, and getting into a GDQ is like such an honor. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure that there are people who they get into speedrunning and they're like, "Ooh, I really think I can get into GDQ with this." But like, at least myself personally, I never thought of myself as, I don't want to say being able to get into a GDQ, but more of like when I started any percent, I thought like, ooh, one day, I'll get a sub 20, and not thinking that I would, like, right now, when I started speedrunning Meat Boy, the world record was 17:37. Right now, my PB 90% is 17:37. So it was like getting that time, that is the world record of when I started. Remember watching that run being like, how is this even possible? Is such like a huge thing that like, it's just really cool to like get into a GDQ, all of these things where you're watching and really experiencing speed running from the outside, and then when you get in to have those sort of experiences is really cool. And it's something that like I never would have thought when I started speedrunning at all that I'd be in GDQ 3 different times, and then like again like a GDQX and a PAX West and a Chrono Relief done quick and a bunch of hot fixes. It's really cool.
Yep.
Um,
It's my
yeah,
favorite part about the hobby now is live events, hanging.
yeah,
Yeah, community
yeah.
aspect's always what I've grown to love most about everything. So
Yeah. Need more. I again, as I was saying it before to like head this question, I really wish there was more in-person ones, but the economics behind it are
yeah,
so difficult. It's so difficult because even if you're able to like get your own event space basically for free at like some convention that's near you, you still are basically on your own for all of the other costs of production when it comes to that. It's a miracle that these events happen in like a Midwest Speed Fest. And, Pace just ended
hmm
um, for variety of things, not to get into any of that, but
yeah,
it's when events like that go away, the problem is that you can think that, ooh, maybe somebody else just puts on a speedrun event, but
it's not that easy.
it's not that easy. You're putting in it's a huge financial risk. So you basically have to have somebody who's really prepared to spend, and if you get that event space on your own, like for free, you're not then able to charge people for coming in and actually doing it. So you're basically just reliant on like subs. And if you're doing like a marathon, you're probably, you're getting that money for charity. And so people being like, why would I sub? This is all for charity. But it's like, you know
mm,
you're really spending like thousands of dollars in risk of things. And so like even events like Pace, in theory, right, those are the ways that you want to do it to get an event space. But Pace is a very specific thing. They got there largely through being like big Mario runners, among other things. I'm not trying to say it's
mhm.
only because of that, but very difficult to get those started. And I do hope that maybe there's a way to get more local things, like Northwest Speed Fest was a thing, is a thing. I don't think they ever did an in-person one, but getting things like those back, like a California event back, more thing, like a event in like Texas, having things happening all over the place. That's more about just like local, more community aspects of things is what I would love to see the speedrun community go to.
Yeah,
Because
I
even with
definitely wish there were more.
yeah, it's like imagine if a fighting game community was just majors, That's
hmm
kind of the way that it feels like with GDQ. And there's still like Speed-Ons is next week, the French one. RTA in Japan is big.
hmm
Um
But those are
who
like
knows what's going.
worldwide. We don't have like nationwide type deals.
Yeah, exactly. But like if you every Saturday, if you want to watch a Smash Bros tournament, you'll find one. If you want to watch a Tekken tournament, you'll find one somewhere on the internet. And that's somewhere where I don't think it'll ever be like the fighting game community, but I do hope that it can be one where like, you know, you don't have to travel halfway across the country to find one. You might not even need to get a hotel, right? You're just like, oh, it's just like an hour and a half drive or something. And then you get there and hang out for the day and, head back home or something
Yeah.
is
My closest one
something.
is 9 hours SGDQ, so got
Yeah.
nothing else nearby.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Hopefully one day. I mean, again, speedrun community is very lucky to have GDQ.
hmm
Um, it's very possible that even speedrunning could be as big as it is and not have an event like that. I sometimes I fear as though I'm like just praising them too much in terms of like what, but I genuinely I think the speedrun community is very lucky to have them and where they have come. To people, have their unfair criticism about them being too corporate, but in a lot of ways that helps protect that from being something that has these sort of unfortunate things that derail them. They've managed themselves well, and that in turn helps the speedrun community have a very serious, like basically convention to go to that's also broadcast online and raises a lot of money
When
for
in doubt,
charity.
they're always there, and they do
Yeah.
the most amount of work to
Yeah, say
help
what
the
you will.
world.
And my thing is like, if you don't like GDQ because it feels like too sanitized or too corporate or anything, I don't agree with you, but that's fine. I understand where you're coming from.
hmm
There's so many other places to get speedrun content though that like, you know, it's to me it feels kind of a little bit lazy. But I do hope that maybe those people can get more. My hope is that those people can get more speedrun marathons through different avenues,
hmm
and hopefully get that because I think that people really miss the like gosh, what was it, 2012 or so, where it's the one where there was the Narcissa Ocarina of Time run. where she goes over like the history, and it felt like there was like 50 people in like such a small room reading every single donation. It felt really like organic, and I get where people want to have that back, but um it's not that easy.
No, it's
um and hopefully we could have that at some point. That is one of those where that's what I would see the speedrunning, if it's going to be this like really grow what it is. In a lot of ways, I think that growing the speedrun community is not like a super important goal, but if it's ever going to grow like that, that's a way that I really think that it has to go, is through people seeing speedrunning as something more of what they can do themselves and around them in their community. That way they're not intimidated by it as much. But
we'll see, I
yeah,
guess.
we'll see.
Well, sounds like that's most of everything. Kind
Yeah,
of reached a good resolution, it sounds like.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me here. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, really appreciative to for you letting me have this time.
No problem. Just a couple of last things though. Just future plans, near or far, for you in speedrunning and whatever else.
It is really the 106 Deathless stuff, and then I'll be doing all achievements at the same time. And then after I get that, I don't know. I really I don't know. In a way, that's kind of nice. In another way, that's I have no idea. Hopefully, I pick up another run. My goal for speedrunning this year is to pick up something else, especially something new. I don't care if I do speedrun something old as well and pick it up and get PBs in it. But one thing that I really love about speedrunning when you're just first learning a game is when you can realistically just like practice for 2 hours, do a run, and you get a PB. Then you practice for 2 hours, you do 1 or 2 runs, you get a PB. I love that stage of speedrunning. I think it's awesome. And so I need to go back and so that's really my plan, is to find something. But maybe that's just doing more casual runs. I don't know. Till I find something. Can't be too picky, I guess.
Yeah. Well, where can we find you on the internet?
I'm SHREDBERG pretty much anywhere, except for like Instagram. That's not me. I think you'll find out pretty quickly that the Instagram SHREDBERG's not me, but either way. I am on twitch.tv/SHREDBERG. I'm on Twitter at SHREDBERG. I don't use Twitter as much anymore. You can really find me at Blue Sky, which I'm like shredberg.bsky.social. I should change that to be shredberg.com. I have that URL already. But there's that there. You can follow me. Be wary if you're following me on Blue Sky that I do post about basketball a lot there. Where on Twitter it's just speedrunning stuff. Yeah, I post about basketball a lot. But the way that I think about it is there's a lot of people that I follow that post about like anime a lot, and I don't care. But
yeah,
maybe they care a lot about seeing basketball stuff. Sometimes I know people unfollow me because I post too much about basketball, and I don't blame them. It's like, hey, I know you don't care about this like dunk highlight that I just posted, but
the real ones stay for the bangers, though, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And then there's even I have a lot of basketball followers that when sometimes I'll like post about video games for like a bunch, and then they unfollow me. But like, so I've been at like the high like 3.1 thousand followers for like a little bit now, because there's just like this momentum of people unfollowing but then people following, so it's been fun. But either way, Blue Sky is where I spend most of my time on social media. That's a fun place. I post there actually a decent amount. And Twitter, when I think I have something that's funny, I will post it there. But for the most part, I think Twitter kind of sucks these days, but you can follow me on there too.
You have a YouTube too, right?
I do. I think you can just do youtube.com/SHREDBERG on there. I'm just SHREDBERG on it. It's at SHREDBERG is the like at thing. I'm hoping to get another one of my goals. I guess I forgot, even though I've worked on it consistently. I'm trying to do some like videos on it. I'm very bad at video editing, and because of that, I struggle to actually get it done. But my goal is there's like a couple scripts that I've had for literally like 3-4 years at this point, and I want to actually like get the video done. So you can go subscribe to me at youtube.com/SHREDBERG. Let me see, actually, is that all you need to do? Yeah, that's all you need to do. So you can go ahead and do that. And that's pretty much all All the places where you can find me.
There we go. I guess GG, we did it.
We did it. Yeah,
We
thank you
did
so
it,
much for having me.
boomers. Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being on. And thank you everyone for watching. Yep. Still going strong here, so expect more episodes every Sunday. If you're watching live, check out the VOD being uploaded right after. Watch on YouTube. Check these out live on Twitch. It's fun. Could ask some questions and stuff. And yeah, just keeping it going. Over 100 strong. There are a lot of speedrunners out there. Who knows when I'll get sick of it, but not yet. But yeah, that'll be all for today. So, yep, take care. Thanks for watching and have a good one. Bye.